They thought they were welcoming another broken body into their world, a silent giant meant to bend, sweat, and obey. But the moment he stepped onto the land, something shifted. The air itself seemed to pause, as if it recognized a presence no one else understood. He lowered his eyes, said nothing, and followed orders like a man already defeated. Yet beneath that calm surface lived a danger no one could name, and no one thought to look for. This is a story about what happens when arrogance blinds power, when silence is mistaken for weakness, and when a hunter is forced to live among those who believe they own him. In a world built on control and cruelty, his greatest weapon is not strength, but patience. As eyes turn away and guards grow careless, a quiet truth takes shape. The most underestimated man is often the most prepared, and when his true nature finally rises to the surface, it will not just shock them. It will expose the fatal cost of never seeing people for who they truly are. The day the new enslaved man arrived began like any other, with dust hanging low in the morning air and the slow rhythm of the plantation already set in motion. But the routine shattered the moment the wagon rolled through the gates. The master's wife, standing on the veranda with a ledger pressed to her chest, felt her breath catch. What stepped down from the wagon was not just another laborer. He was enormous, taller than any man she had ever seen on the estate, broad, shouldered, heavy with muscle, yet moving with a strange calm that made the ground seem quieter beneath his feet. Her first emotion was shock. She had expected the usual signs of fear or exhaustion, the nervous shifting of eyes that came with arrival. Instead, the giant stood still, eyes lowered, hands relaxed at his sides. There was no trembling, no pleading glance. His silence felt deliberate, not broken. It unsettled her more than defiance ever could. Around her, whispers spread quickly. Overseers exchanged looks, some amused, some wary. A man that large could be useful in the fields, or dangerous. The master's wife tried to compose herself, reminding her face to remain smooth, proper. Yet inside her thoughts raced. Strength like that belongs to men who know how to use it, she thought, and knowledge, she believed, was far more threatening than brute force. As the overseer called out instructions, the giant followed them with careful precision. Every movement was measured. When told to lift a heavy crate, he did so without strain, but also without showing off. He neither rushed nor resisted. This balance, power held tightly under control, made the master's wife uneasy. She had seen strong men before, but they often tried to prove it. This one seemed to hide it. Emotion shifted from shock to suspicion. She felt it in the way he listened, head slightly tilted, absorbing sounds like a man mapping a landscape. He noticed the spacing of buildings, the position of guards, the direction of the wind. These were not the habits of someone newly broken by captivity. These were the habits of someone accustomed to the wild, to tracking and surviving. The master's wife did not have words for it yet, but her instincts warned her. This man was not what he appeared to be. At supper that evening, she found it impossible to focus. Her husband spoke of yields and weather, of repairs and trade, but her mind returned to the quiet giant. She asked casually where he would be placed. In the outer fields, the master replied, let him work himself down to size. She forced a smile, though the phrase rang hollow. Men like that did not shrink easily, they adapted. That night, sleep came in fragments. Dreams brought images of shadows moving through tall grass, of unseen eyes watching from the tree line. She woke before dawn with a start, heart pounding, unsure why fear had taken such a strong hold. She told herself it was foolish. superstition mixed with fatigue, and yet, when morning came, she watched for him again. Days passed, and the giant did nothing to confirm her worries, nothing obvious, at least. He worked hard, obeyed orders, kept his head down, but small details accumulated like pebbles in her shoe. He never wasted energy. He knew how to handle tools too well for someone new. He avoided conflict without appearing weak. When other enslaved people struggled, he helped quietly without drawing attention. Respect began to form around him, subtle but real. Emotionally, the master's wife felt torn between control and uncertainty. She was used to a world where roles were fixed and predictable. The giant disrupted that order simply by existing. His presence forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. Power is not always visible, and silence can be more dangerous than noise. One afternoon, she watched him pause at the edge of the fields, eyes scanning the tree line. For a brief second, his posture changed. He looked, alert, alive. Then the moment passed, and he returned to work. But it was enough. She knew then that he carried a life before this place, a life of movement, awareness, and self-reliance. Perhaps he had hunted to survive. Perhaps he still thought like one. The main lesson of this keynote lies in the danger of underestimation. The master's wife judged him first by size, then by silence, trying to place him neatly into a role she understood. But human beings cannot be reduced so easily. Strength can be hidden. Intelligence can be quiet. Survival skills do not disappear simply because circumstances change. Another lesson is about fear itself. Her fear did not come from what the giant did, but from what he might be capable of. It revealed how fragile her sense of control truly was. When power is built on dominance rather than understanding, even a silent presence can feel like a threat. Finally, this moment marks the beginning of tension, a spark that promises future revelation. The shocking arrival is not about action, but about awareness. It sets the stage for a deeper story where appearances deceive, roles reverse, and the quiet hunter may one day step out of the shadows. In the end, the master's wife's shock is not just about a man's size. It is about realizing that some forces cannot be owned, only underestimated, and that realization is far more frightening than open rebellion. After the shock of his arrival faded, the giant enslaved man slowly disappeared into the background of plantation life, or so everyone believed. His silence, his steady pace, and his refusal to draw attention to himself quickly earned him a reputation that followed him like a shadow, slow but useful, strong but simple, obedient and harmless. For the people in power, this judgment brought comfort. A man who did not speak much, who did not argue, and who followed instructions without hesitation, was easy to manage, or so they thought. The overseers were the first to decide his place. They mistook his calm movements for dullness and his careful listening for confusion. When orders were shouted, he responded without urgency, not out of inability, but out of control. He never rushed, never panicked. To them, this looked like slowness. They laughed quietly, calling him a gentle giant, convinced that size was his only strength and that his mind held little threat. Among the enslaved workers, opinions were divided. Some believed the rumors and kept their distance, assuming he was simple, minded, and best avoided. Others sensed something different. They noticed how he remembered details, paths between buildings, shifts in guard routines, changes in weather. They saw how he conserved his energy, how he never complained yet never broke. Still, fear kept most from speaking openly. On plantations, attention could be dangerous, and mystery was often mistaken for weakness. Emotionally, this period was one of deep tension beneath the surface. To those in control, there was comfort and even pride in believing they had reduced a powerful man to a harmless tool. Their confidence grew careless. Orders became lazy. Rules were enforced without thought. They believed they understood him completely because they had labeled him. That label blinded them, for the giant, being underestimated, was both a burden and a shield. Each insult swallowed, each laugh ignored, each command followed added weight to his silence. Yet within him, patience hardened like steel. He understood something they did not. When people believe you are weak, they stop watching closely. They reveal themselves, they make mistakes. There were moments when this false judgment revealed its cruelty. He was assigned the heaviest tasks under the assumption that strength required no skill or intelligence. When he completed them efficiently, it was credited to brute force, not thought. When he slowed his pace to avoid injury, he was mocked for being dim. The injustice of it pressed against him daily, but he never reacted. Reaction would have confirmed their expectations, or worse, raised suspicion. The master's wife also fell into this mistake, though uneasily. She convinced herself that her earlier fear had been imagination. If he were dangerous, she reasoned, there would be signs. She saw obedience and mistook it for submission. She saw silence and mistook it for emptiness. In doing so, she silenced her own instincts, choosing comfort over caution. One afternoon, an overseer deliberately tested the giant. He gave confusing instructions, changing them midway, expecting confusion or failure. The giant paused, listened carefully, then completed the task flawlessly. The overseer laughed it off, claiming luck. But beneath that laughter was irritation. It is deeply unsettling when someone you believe inferior quietly proves otherwise without challenging you directly. The emotional heart of this keynote lies in arrogance. Those who judged the giant did so not because of evidence, but because of belief. They believed status defined nature, that power belonged only to those who claimed it loudly. This belief allowed them to sleep easily at night, convinced that control was permanent and unchallenged. Yet history, both personal and collective, teaches a dangerous truth. People are rarely what they are forced to appear. Survival often demands disguise. Intelligence often hides behind silence. Strength often learns patience before it learns resistance. For the giant, being mistaken for weak became a strategy, though not one he chose freely. He learned when to lower his eyes and when to observe. He learned whose footsteps meant danger and whose meant opportunity. He learned that the most underestimated people often carry the greatest potential for change, not through sudden violence, but through timing. The lesson for the audience is clear and deeply human. Judging others by labels, by roles, appearances, or status does not reveal who they are. It reveals who we are, our fears, our arrogance, and our desire for simple explanations. When we assume obedience equals weakness, we ignore the complexity of survival. When we confuse silence with emptiness, we miss the stories unfolding quietly around us. This keynote also warns of complacency. The overseer's greatest mistake was not cruelty alone, but certainty, certainty that they understood everything, certainty that power could never shift. History shows again and again that such certainty is fragile. By the end of this phase, the giant has done nothing dramatic, no rebellion, no escape, no confrontation, And that is precisely why the mistake is so dangerous. The calm continues, the judgments remain. And beneath them, something sharp waits patiently, because when a hunter is mistaken for prey, the forest grows quiet, not safe. Long before chains defined his days, the giant had lived by different rules, rules written by forests, rivers, and open skies. No one on the plantation knew this. To them, he was only a body meant for labor, a presence reduced to strength and silence. But beneath that quiet exterior lived a past shaped by patience, awareness, and survival. He was not merely strong, he was trained, by nature, by necessity, and by experience, to observe before acting. His life as a hunter had taught him lessons no overseer could beat out of him. A hunter learns to read the land like a story. He notices broken twigs, disturbed soil, the sudden stillness of birds. On the plantation, those instincts did not disappear. They adapted. He read people instead of trails. He watched patterns instead of animal tracks. He listened for changes in tone rather than the snap of branches. Emotionally, this hidden past was both a refuge and a wound. Memories of freedom came with pain, the loss of choice, of dignity, of open movement. Yet they also gave him something precious, identity. While others tried to define him as property, his past reminded him that he was more than his present condition. He had once provided food, protected others, and moved with purpose. That knowledge steadied him when humiliation threatened to break him. The mindset of a hunter is not about violence, it is about restraint. You wait, you breathe, you act only when the moment is right. This mindset shaped every decision he made on the plantation. When insulted, he did not respond. When pushed, he did not resist openly, not because he was afraid, but because he understood consequences. A hunter who acts too early goes hungry, or worse. Small moments revealed his training, though no one recognized them for what they were. He knew how to walk quietly despite his size. He sensed storms before clouds gathered, adjusting his work instinctively. When tools broke, he fixed them with efficiency that came from years of improvisation in the wild. These acts were dismissed as luck or simplicity, yet they were signs of a mind trained to solve problems quickly and quietly. At night, when exhaustion settled over the quarters, his thoughts wandered back to the forests of his past. He remembered tracking deer for days, understanding their habits, knowing when to move and when to stay still. Those memories carried sorrow, but also strength. They reminded him that survival was not new to him. He had survived hunger, danger, and uncertainty before. This place was different, but not undefeatable. The emotional tension of this keynote lies in contrast. Outwardly, he appeared contained. Inwardly, he was alert and calculating. He studied guard routines, distances between buildings, and the moods of those in charge. Not with immediate plans of escape or rebellion, but with preparation. A hunter prepares long before the hunt begins. Knowledge is gathered piece by piece. There was also a quiet moral struggle within him. Hunting had once been about providing, about balance between taking and respecting life. Now he lived in a world where human beings were treated as expendable. This clash weighed heavily on him. It fueled a deep understanding of injustice, sharpening his sense of right and wrong. His silence was not emptiness, it was reflection. The master's wife occasionally sensed something she could not name. When she caught his gaze, it was steady, not vacant. There was depth there, awareness. But comfort demanded denial, and so his past remained hidden. Power often refuses to recognize intelligence in those it seeks to control. The key lesson of this keynote is that experience does not vanish when circumstances change. Skills adapt, identity survives. The giant's past as a hunter shaped how he endured oppression, not through reckless action, but through strategic patience. His restraint was not submission, it was preparation. Another important lesson is about visibility. Society often values loudness over awareness, action over thought. Yet history shows that the most significant changes often begin quietly. Those who observe deeply understand systems better than those who command loudly. The giant's hidden past gave him that understanding. This keynote also challenges assumptions about strength. True strength is not constant movement or visible defiance. It is knowing when to wait, when to learn, and when to act. The hunter's mindset taught him that survival depends on timing as much as courage. As this part of the story unfolds, nothing dramatic happens, and that is exactly the point. The danger, the power, and the possibility all remain unseen. His past stays hidden, but it shapes every breath he takes. Like a hunter watching from the trees, he remains still, not because he is trapped, but because he is ready. And when the moment eventually comes, it will not feel sudden to him. It will feel earned. Silence became the giant's armor, not the silence of fear, but the deliberate quiet of someone who understood the value of invisibility. On the plantation, noise invited attention, and attention invited punishment. From the moment he realized this, he chose a path that confused those who watched him. He spoke little, moved steadily, and revealed nothing of what he felt or knew. This deception was not a lie told aloud. It was a performance of harmlessness, worn every day like a second skin. To the overseers, his quiet behavior confirmed their assumptions. A man who did not argue, complain, or resist was, in their minds, already broken. They stopped looking closely. Orders were given without explanation. Guards grew lazy around him. The giant learned quickly that the less he reacted, the more freedom he gained within narrow boundaries. He could linger a moment longer near the barns, take alternate paths between fields, listen without being questioned. Silence opened doors that strength never could. Emotionally, this deception came at a cost. Swallowing anger is not easy, especially when injustice is constant. There were days when mockery burned hotter than the sun, when commands were barked simply to humiliate. Each time he felt the pull to react, to remind them of his power, but he remembered the hunter's rule: act too soon and you lose everything. So he breathed, lowered his eyes, and let the moment pass. What looked like weakness was discipline. As weeks turned into months, his quiet presence blended into the rhythm of the plantation. That was exactly what he wanted. When people believe they understand you, they stop guarding themselves. Conversations happened openly around him. He heard complaints, fears, and careless truths. He learned which overseer drank too much, which guard skipped rounds at night, which path was least watched at dawn. None of this required questions. It required patience. The deception worked because it fed the pride of those in power. They believed they had reduced a giant to a tool, and that belief made them careless. Power often underestimates silence, mistaking it for surrender. The master's wife, too, began to relax. Her early unease faded as nothing went wrong. The quiet man caused no trouble. Life continued. Comfort returned, and comfort, like arrogance, dulls awareness. Inside, however, the giant was constantly alert. His mind catalogued everything. He noticed how quickly punishment followed certain actions, and how slowly it followed others. He observed who showed cruelty for pleasure and who did so from fear. This understanding deepened his sense of the system he was trapped in. Knowledge became his true strength. With it, he could predict reactions, avoid danger, and protect himself, and sometimes others, without drawing attention. There were moments when his deception protected more than just himself. When conflict arose among the enslaved workers, his calm presence often eased tension. He never positioned himself as a leader, never gave speeches or commands. Instead, he listened. He helped quietly. His silence made people feel safe around him. They spoke freely, trusting him without fully knowing why. In this way, his deception created a small pocket of stability in a harsh world. Emotionally, this phase of the story is defined by restraint and endurance. The giant carried his true self like a secret flame, careful not to let it flare too brightly. Loneliness was part of the cost. Being unseen can protect you, but it can also isolate you. There were nights when he longed to speak openly, to share his past, his thoughts, his plans, but trust, like survival, had to be earned slowly. The power of deception is not about manipulation. It is about control. By choosing how he was seen, the giant reclaimed a small piece of agency in a place designed to strip him of it. He could not control his circumstances, but he could control his reactions. This choice gave him dignity in a world that denied it. The key lesson of this keynote is simple but profound. Not all strength is visible. Loud defiance can inspire, but quiet endurance can preserve. Sometimes survival requires strategy, not confrontation. The giant's deception was not cowardice. It was wisdom shaped by experience. Another lesson lies in awareness. Those who underestimate others often do so because they rely on appearances. Silence, obedience, and calm can hide sharp intelligence and deep resolve. When people stop questioning their assumptions, they become vulnerable to their own blindness. This keynote also speaks to the cost of patience. Waiting demands emotional control and inner strength. It requires enduring injustice without losing one's sense of self. The giant's quiet behavior protected his body, but his true victory was protecting his mind. He never allowed their judgment to become his identity. As this part of the story unfolds, nothing explodes, no dramatic confrontation breaks the calm. Instead, tension builds quietly like a drawn bow. The deception continues, and with it, preparation. The world around him believes it is safe because it is quiet, but the hunter knows better. Silence is not emptiness, it is listening, and listening is power. Every quiet story carries a turning point, a moment when what has been hidden can no longer remain buried. In this tale, the reversal of power does not arrive suddenly with violence or noise. Instead, it grows slowly, fed by arrogance, carelessness, and the dangerous belief that control is permanent. The plantation's greatest mistake was not cruelty alone. It was certainty, certainty that the giant was harmless, certainty that silence meant submission, certainty that power only moved in one direction. For a long time, everything appears stable. The routines continue. Orders are obeyed. The hunter remains quiet. Those in charge feel secure, even bored. When people believe nothing will change, they stop preparing for change. This is where power begins to rot, from the inside. The first signs of reversal are subtle. An overseer makes a mistake, assuming the giant will not notice. A guard leaves a gate unsecured, believing no one would dare use it. The master's wife, once uneasy, dismisses her instincts entirely. Comfort replaces caution, arrogance replaces awareness. Each small act of carelessness shifts the balance, though no one recognizes it yet. Emotionally, this phase is charged with tension. For those in power, there is confidence, almost pride, in how completely they believe they have mastered the situation. They laugh more openly. They speak freely in front of the giant. Their words reveal fear, weakness, and division. They do not realize they are being studied by someone who understands systems, patterns, and timing. For the hunter, these moments confirm what he has always known: arrogance creates opportunity. His emotions are controlled but intense. There is no joy in watching others fail. There is resolve. He understands that when the moment comes, it must mean something, not just for him, but for what he represents. The reversal of power is not revenge. It is truth rising to the surface. The story hints that the turning point will come when control is tested, perhaps during a crisis, a mistake, or an unexpected threat. In that moment, the skills that were ignored will suddenly matter. Strength, awareness, leadership, and calm under pressure will reveal themselves naturally. The hunter will not announce who he is. He will simply act, and that action will contradict every assumption made about him. When power reverses, emotions collide. Shock replaces confidence. Fear replaces authority. Those who once commanded realize too late that they never truly understood the man they controlled. The master's wife, in particular, faces a deep internal reckoning. Her early instincts return, sharper and heavier. She recognizes that her comfort was built on denial, and that denial has consequences. This reversal exposes a painful truth. Systems of dominance rely on myths. The myth that some people are born to command and others to obey. The myth that silence equals emptiness. The myth that strength must look a certain way to be real. When the hunter's true nature surfaces, these myths collapse under their own weight. The emotional impact of this moment is powerful because it is earned. The hunter's patience transforms into authority, not granted, but claimed through competence and clarity. His calm does not break, it deepens. He does not need to shout or threaten. His presence alone shifts the room. Those who once looked past him now cannot look away. The lesson here is universal and deeply human. Underestimation is one of the most dangerous forms of arrogance. When people are reduced to roles, labels, or appearances, their complexity is ignored, and that ignorance invites downfall. History repeatedly shows that power built on dismissal is fragile. It cannot adapt because it refuses to learn. Another lesson is about timing. True strength is not proven by constant action, but by knowing when action matters. The hunter waited not because he was weak, but because he was wise. He understood that survival comes first and transformation comes second. His restraint preserved him long enough for truth to matter. This keynote also challenges the audience to reflect inwardly. How often do we judge others by silence, status, or surface behavior? How often do we mistake patience for passivity, humility for lack of ability? The story reminds us that everyone carries a hidden history, a depth unseen by casual observation. The reversal of power does not promise a perfect ending. It promises clarity. Once truth surfaces, things cannot return to how they were. That is the real danger for those who underestimate others, not punishment, but exposure. Exposure of their blindness, their fear, and their false sense of control. As the story approaches this inevitable moment, the tension tightens. The quiet hunter stands at the center, not as a symbol of rebellion, but as proof that power is never as fixed as it seems. When the world finally sees him clearly, it will not be because he changed. It will be because everyone else was finally forced to look. And in that moment, the greatest lesson becomes undeniable. Power does not belong to those who shout the loudest. It belongs to those who endure, observe, and act when truth demands it. The story closes not with chaos, but with clarity. What began as the arrival of a silent giant ends as a lesson written into every life that witnessed him. From the moment he stepped onto the plantation, he was misunderstood, judged by his chains, his silence, and the role forced upon him. His size shocked them, his obedience comforted them, and his quiet presence slowly erased their fear. That was their greatest mistake. While they believed him weak, he was watching. While they believed him broken, he was remembering. While they believed power belonged only to them, he was preparing. The giant endured humiliation without losing himself. He allowed others to underestimate him, not because he lacked strength, but because he understood timing. His hidden past as a hunter shaped every choice, teaching him patience, awareness, and control. Silence became his shield, obedience became his disguise, and knowledge became his true weapon. When the moment finally arrived, the moment when arrogance collided with reality, the truth surfaced naturally, not through reckless violence, but through decisive action. In that instant, everything they believed collapsed. The man they thought harmless revealed calm authority. The one they ignored became impossible to overlook, and the power they assumed was permanent proved fragile. For the master's wife, the ending carried a heavy reckoning. Her earliest instincts had been right, yet comfort led her to deny them. She learned too late that ignoring truth does not erase it. It only delays the consequences. For the overseers, the lesson was harsher. Power built on arrogance invites its own undoing. The emotional weight of the story lies in its restraint. The hunter does not become a monster to defeat monsters. He remains who he always was: observant, disciplined, and deliberate. His victory is not domination, but exposure. Exposure of false control. Exposure of careless certainty. Exposure of the dangerous lie that silence means weakness. The lasting lesson is universal and unforgettable. Never confuse patience with passivity. Never judge a person by the position they are forced into, and never assume you understand someone simply because they do not speak. In the end, the world did not change because the giant revealed himself. It changed because everyone else was forced to see, and that is the most powerful ending of all, a reminder that true strength does not announce itself, it waits, and when it rises, it leaves no doubt behind.